Mel Gibson sat down for a 3-hour conversation with Joe Rogan, which hit on many good themes like spiritual warfare, Christianity, health, politics, etc. from Gibson's unique and creative perspective. The top nuggets, though, are these two that I'm about to show you. They effectively ruin the credibility of Anthony Fauci and the mainstream media. Gibson actually goes off a bit, and it's both very true and hilarious, as you're about to see. They also absolutely destroy Gavin Newsom for ruining the state of California and being wholly unprepared for the fires that are currently raging through the state. This unpreparedness, fundamentally because of moral corruption, hits on a very important Jordan Peterson theme that I'm going to bring into this. I'm Zach Costello, and this is the Zach Costello Show.
Yeah, we were just talking about the wildfire situation and how crazy it is that they spent $24 billion last year on the homeless.
Yeah.
And what do they spend on preventing these wildfires?
Zero.
Not zip.
Zip. And in 2019, I think Newsom said, I'm going to take care of the forests and maintain the forests and do all that kind of stuff. He didn't do anything.
Didn't do anything. And then on top of that, they cut the water off.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's all funny. And then I think all our tax dollars probably went for Gavin's hair gel. I don't know, but it's like, it's sad. It's like the place is just on fire.
Well, the whole state is just so poorly managed. It's so it's so frustrating and confusing. And then he gets on TV and pretends like everything's great. Mm-hmm. And California's the best. We have the best state. We have the most amazing economy. I'm like, you're out of your fucking mind, dude. You've ruined this state. Like, personally ruined it.
Well, it's the same team that was up in San Francisco, and they came down to L.A., and they're doing what they did in San Francisco. And
yeah,
San Francisco's kind of like apocalyptic now,
Yeah.
I went there, and it's just like people, homeless. It's a mess.
It's just unbelievable that society can crumble that quickly.
Mm-hmm.
It really is unbelievable.
It doesn't take long.
No.
So, remember when Gavin Newsom complained that his son listened to too much Jordan Peterson? Well, maybe he should reconsider. Peterson did commentary on the state of New Orleans' failure to be prepared for Hurricane Katrina and the story of Noah and the flood. Listen to this.
And so you might also say that a tremendous amount of the money and time and resources that could have and should have and was planned to go towards fixing the problem didn't. And so the hurricane came along and, oh my God, wasn't it a natural disaster? And the question is, what bloody well makes you so sure that it was a natural disaster, right? Because if the infrastructure would have been maintained and built to the specifications that were certainly technically possible and would have actually been less expensive in the long run to build, and everyone knew it, and the hurricane came along and wiped out the city, why do you think that's a natural disaster? To me, that's a natural example, if you think about it from a metaphorical perspective, of a judgmental God deciding to use a flood to teach a moral lesson. And you might say, well, that's pretty harsh. What about all those flood survivors? It's like, yeah, well, the whole flood thing was kind of harsh. And so pointing out that there were steps that could have been taken and also that I doubt in the aftermath have been taken, even though everyone knows now exactly what had happened, is you might consider it a diagnosis, but it's irrelevant because what I'm really trying to tell you is how the mythological stories would line up on this, because you can tell a story about Mother Nature manifesting her catastrophe and potential for tragedy, or you could tell another story of an absolute failure of the human social structure and the human individual level because of the corruption to address a problem that everyone knew was there. And so that's a good example of how the flood comes when you're not behaving properly. And one of the things that's quite interesting about the Old Testament and the people who wrote it is that they always assumed that if the flood comes, that meant you weren't prepared. If that's the rule, right? It's like the a priori axiom. They think, you got flooded out? Hey, you weren't prepared enough. Well, how can you tell? Well, you got flooded out, right? That's the evidence. And you might say, well, that's not very fair. It's like, fair isn't the point. The point is, do you want to get flooded out again or not? Because fair would be, well, you better figure out why you got flooded out and fix it so it doesn't happen again. And that's the moral thing to do when you're thinking about morality, as walking the path that's most appropriate to get to the destination that you think would be the best possible destination.
So just another biblical, historical, and universal truth revealing itself once again. God is love, God is the voice of conscience. God is the call to adventure from your life of comfort. God is that which prepares you for the flood. Fundamentally, it's moral corruption and godlessness that has ruined the state of California, in my opinion. This is a recurring theme throughout human history. Speaking of corruption and holding people accountable, here is now Gibson and Rogan effectively ruining any shred of credibility Anthony Fauci or the mainstream media might have been clinging to. What Gibson does here at the end of this is both very true and hilarious. Check this out.
I mean, I remember, I think
Sure.
they were giving you a grilling once for taking horseworm medicine.
Yeah, funny. Funny how that works.
Yeah, funny how that works.
Well,
funny how that does work.
Yeah, what's really funny is how that was a part of the demise of mainstream media.
Mm-hmm.
Because people were like, well, this is crazy. This doesn't make – are you guys really the news? Like, what is this?
Yes, I know.
Yeah.
They seem to be complicit with a
100%.
and you think, well, why? But why?
Because of money.
I
I
guess.
think this is what we were talking about before, that there is good and evil.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
sometimes it manifests itself in a very clear and obvious way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what that was. That was evil. That was putting people's lives second and putting money first.
Well, I don't know why Fauci's still walking around.
How is that guy still walking around?
I don't get it.
If just people understand the history of the AIDS crisis and what that guy did back then.
Did you read that book?
Yeah.
Yeah, I read the book. I listened to it.
Yeah, I did too.
I drove up to San Francisco and I listened to it, and I had road rage.
Oh, yeah.
And it was like, whoa, how is he still there?
First of all, people that don't believe it, how come RFK Jr. didn't get sued?
Yeah.
How come there's no lawsuits? If there was lies, there would be lawsuits.
No, but that's
He would be publicly humiliated. Instead, they kept that book off bestseller lists. That book sold millions of copies.
I know.
They hid it. That's when you find out that bestseller lists are actually curated. It's not really bestseller.
Yeah. It's censored. It's all censored.
Yeah.
Everything's censored,
But that book is an accurate depiction of what Anthony Fauci did during the AIDS crisis, which
Yeah.
probably was an AZT crisis.
Yeah,
more
now
than it was an AIDS crisis.
I mean, it's fairly incontrovertible now that he
Right.
was fooling with gain of function.
100%.
And it's why is he still around?
Right.
Or at least free.
Right. And no repercussions.
Yeah, whatever happened to that story where the wombat and the weasel got together and they
Yeah.
were horsing around and a bat pissed on him with a
pangolin.
golden shower?
Yeah.
It's like, and all of a sudden it was in a wet market.
Yeah.
Very wet market. You got
Complete total horseshit. And
Totally.
the scientists that we're supposed to trust
Yeah,
were pitching that horseshit.
It was like the AIDS thing. Some green monkey bit a Qantas Stewart on the ass. Then he went around the world and got everybody sick. And it was like, ridiculous.
Ridiculous is right. This is an individual who has lied his face off to the American people for essentially his entire career and has not been held accountable for the things that he has done and said. When it comes down to it, there are very severe consequences for tolerating and allowing corruption, lies, and godlessness to fester. It leaves us vulnerable, defenseless, and open to attack. This is true for us as individuals and as a nation. I'm Zach Costello, and this is The Zach Costello Show.